Welcome back to another episode of the Realistic Rebuild series featuring the Baltimore Panthers. Today, we're going to take a look at the end of season stats and also simulate the playoff tournament. The New York Knicks had the best record in the league, 61 wins and 21 losses. Right behind them is the Mavericks and Timberwolves tied from the West, 57 and 25 for both of them. The worst record in the league was us, 24 wins and 58 losses. The Hornets, Jazz, and Suns right behind us with 27 and 55. The best offense in the league was the Philadelphia 76ers with 118.7 points per game. They had a record of 40 and 42. We had the worst offense in the league with 99.7, the only team in the NBA that didn't average above 100 points per game. Right behind us is the Sonics with 102. They also had a record of 40 and 42, barely missing out on the play-in tournament. The best defense in the league were the Minnesota Timberwolves, averaging 103.3 points per game. The Golden State Warriors and Sonics amongst the top as well, one of the best defenses in the league. The Sixers also had the worst defense in the league with 118.5, and they had a point differential of 0.2. We were exactly in the middle when it comes to defense with 111.9. Not bad considering that we were the worst team in the NBA. With the worst record in the league comes the worst differential. We led the league, unfortunately, with negative 12.2, and the best differential belongs to the Minnesota Timberwolves with 8.9, New York with 8.7, and Dallas with 8.4. The New Orleans Pelicans had the best field goal percentage in the league with almost 50 per game. Thunder, Lakers, Sixers amongst the top. Sonics had the worst field goal percentage at 44%. Spurs, Nets, Heat not too far behind. And we were sixth worst at 46.3%. The best three-point shooting team were the Philadelphia 76ers with 40% from deep, the only team to shoot above 40%, while also averaging 31.5 attempts per game. We had the worst three-point percentage, 32% from deep, and we attempted 8 less threes than the second worst three-point attempts team. The best rebounding team in the NBA were the New York Knicks with 53.5 rebounds per game. Dallas, Rockets, Spurs, Bulls amongst the top. The Sacramento Kings had the worst rebounds per game with 43, and we were right behind them at 44.5. The Denver Nuggets led the league in assists per game with 32. They were the only team above 30. The Pacers, Cavs, Thunder, and Lakers amongst the top for assists per game. We easily had the worst assists per game at only 18 per game. We were the only team under 20 assists per game, as the Wizards were very close but no cigar. The Oklahoma City Thunder were amongst the top for steals per game with 9.5 steals per game. Lakers, Pelicans, Rockets, and Wolves amongst the top for steals per game. Seattle Supersonics also found themselves top 7 in this category. The Utah Jazz at the bottom with 5.3. The Wizards, Raptors, Pistons, Nets, and Bulls find themselves amongst the bottom 5. We find ourselves at 12 with 7.8 steals per game. Considering how bad our record was, this is not bad at all. The Boston Celtics found themselves on top for blocks per game with 6.6. The Thunder right behind them with 6.4. Cavs, Sixers, and Lakers following them in the top 5. The Atlanta Hawks in the bottom with 4.4, tied with the Houston Rockets, Clippers, Bulls, Panthers, and Raptors right behind them. The team with the most turnovers per game were the Seattle Supersonics, as the Bulls, Thunder, Pacers, and us follow them. We also tied with the Rockets, Blazers, and Nets for 5th place with 15.1 turnover per game. We were also second for fouls per game with 24.1, right under the Toronto Raptors. We were also second in bench points per game with 47 on the dot, right behind the Seattle Supersonics with 47.3 points per game. This makes a lot of sense since none of my players got more than 28 minutes per night, and most of my bench players got at least 12 minutes per night. This is what our scorers look like. Toumani Camara on top with 12.5 points per game, Markelle Fultz with 11.5 points per game, Wiggins with 11, Hardy with 10, Clark with 9.5, Reed with 9.5, and Terrence Shannon Jr. with 8.5. Toumani Camara played the most minutes on my team with 27.5 minutes per night. I wanted to showcase his per 36 numbers. As you can see, a big jump from his rookie year. He's averaging 16.5, 7.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and half a block per game. His shooting splits are also pretty good. Yeah, he could definitely turn into a very decent year 3 player for us next season. He also added an estimated 3 wins added to our team, which proves that Toumani Camara was one of our better players on the team. One thing that I want Toumani Camara to work on this offseason is definitely his efficiency, as it is far below the league average in true shooting and effective field goal percentage. The league average true shooting percentage is 58%, and the league average effective field goal percentage is 54.7%. Markelle Fultz was definitely a very good midseason acquisition as he averaged 11.5 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1 steal, half a block per game. Field goal percentage was great, but the 3-point percentage is definitely an eyesore. 18%, which is terrible, and 76% from the line, which is pretty decent. Per 36 numbers show that he would have averaged 18.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 6 assists per game, 1.5 steals, and 3/4 of a block. To be honest, if he can develop that 3-point shot, I can see Markelle Fultz being a long term piece of this team. Fultz also had a 3 estimated wins added, which basically means he was contributing positively on the court, and I hope to see him develop his jump shot moving forward. Wiggins sustained a massive back injury, which kept him out for 4 months. He was doing really good before his injury, and when he came back, he was a bit more cold. Regardless, he ended his season averaging 11.5 points per game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.2 stocks per game. He was also easily the best 3-point shooter of the team, averaging 38% from deep. Per 36 also shows a jump in Wiggins' production as he averaged 18.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 steals, and half a block per game. This shows that Wiggins has been improving despite his massive injury. He also had a true shooting percentage of 56.5, which is not too far off the league average, and an effective field goal percentage of 52%. He also has an estimated wins added of 2.1, which is not terrible at all. Our next player is Jaden Hardy, who averaged 10.5 points per game, 2 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and half a stock per game. His field goal percentage did increase, but unfortunately his 3 and free throw percentage decreased. He also played only under 20 minutes per night. Per 36, he averaged 19 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists, with 1 stock per game. This shows that he can definitely be a very decent scorer off the bench when given the opportunity. Paul Reed is the next player that I want to show, our starting center of last year, who averaged 9.5 points per game, 7 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and a block per game. His field goal percentage did decrease by 10% last season, only shooting 44%. His 3 did also decrease, but his free throw did rise. His overall versatility is why he was chosen to be the starting center of this team. Per 36, he averaged 15.5 points per game, 11.5 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists per game, 2 steals, and 1.5 blocks per game. Next up is our rookie, Terrence Shannon Jr., who averaged 8.5 points per game, 1.5 rebounds, 3/4 of an assist, 1 steal, and a quarter of a block per game. For a rookie, his percentages aren't the worst thing ever, 43, 34, and 79 from the free throw line, as he only played less than 20 minutes per night. He also received some starting opportunities, but he performed better off the bench. Per 36 minutes, he averaged 16 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 stocks per game. If he can increase his 3-point percentage to at least 38%, he can definitely be a very good 3-and-D option off the bench. James Bouknight wasn't a bad player to add to this roster, but unfortunately his 3-point percentage plummeted after we signed him. Last season he averaged 43% from deep, but this season he only shot 27. Bouknight has a team option at the start of free agency worth $4.3 million, and definitely depending on what we do in the draft, he could become very expendable. The 22-year-old Caleb Houston lost his starting spot to Terrence Shannon Jr. and eventually Aaron Wiggins when he came back from injury. Per 36 numbers indicate a jump in assist production. His free throw percentage also went up a lot, but unfortunately everything else was basically down. JRE is definitely a very decent backup power forward center. His points per game isn't bad, and he's a very decent shooter for his position as well, but unfortunately his defense is extremely terrible. Per 36, this is what his defensive numbers look like. Less than 1 steal per game, and not even half a block per game. For a big man, that is terrible. Even a guy like Markelle Fultz, through his multiple knee injuries, has more blocks per game than him. Ryan Dunn also had a very decent year, but his scoring production is definitely very lackluster, not even averaging 4 points per game. Rebounds wise, 3.5, 2.5 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block per game. He did not make any 3-pointers this season and only shot 44% from the field. His free throw percentage was even more abysmal at only 53%. Per 36 do show that potential to be a Draymond Green type of player, 6 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, with 2 steals and 1.5 blocks per game. However, if he can at least make 35% of his threes next season, that would be a big win. Hakoum Dadier averaged 3 points per game, 1.5 rebounds per game, 1 assist, and half a stock per game. His percentages are terrible, but is a project player that was to be expected. Hopefully next year he can jump up in percentage and production as well. He also played only 13 minutes per night, so he'll definitely get a increased role if he jumps up a lot. Once he can find that 3-point shot, he does project to be a very decent role player for us. He's also one of the youngest players in the NBA at the moment, only 19 years old at the end of the season. This is what the scoring distribution looked like for our team. Toumani Camara led our team in scoring with 12.5 points per game, Fultz with 11.5, Wiggins with 11, Hardy with 10. Our rebounds leader was Reed with 7 rebounds per game, Clark with 6 rebounds per game, Camara with 5.5, Ryan Dunn with 3.5, and Fultz with 3.5 as well. We definitely need to target playmakers in the draft and the offseason in general. Markelle Fultz with only 3.5 as the leader with assists per game. Hardy not too far behind with 2.5, and Ryan Dunn with 2.5 as well. Reed was our steals leader with 1.2 steals per game. Camara and Dunn with 1. Wiggins, Fultz, and Shannon Jr. right under 1. Our blocks leader was Brandon Clark with 1.2 blocks per game. Our two-way contract Ibu Baji with 1.1, but only in 19 games. Paul Reed, Ryan Dunn with just under 1 a game. The league leader in points per game was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 35.5 points per game. Young, Doncic, Brunson, and Edwards follow Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The rebound leaders were Bam Adebayo, Victor Wembanyama, Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jarrett Allen. Adebayo finished the season averaging 13 boards per game. The assist leader was Tyrese Halliburton with 10.1, Doncic, Jokic, Harden, and Young right behind him. The league leader in steals per game was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LaMelo Ball, Paul George, Amen Thompson, and Tyrese Halliburton. The league leader in blocks per game was Wemby with 3 blocks per game, Holmgren, Davis, Embiid, and Mobley in the top 5. A crazy fact is our top scorer, Toumani Camara, with 12.6, finds himself 105th on the most points per game list, which is absurd. The fact that he's the number one option on the team and so low in the league. It's no wonder why we had the worst offense in the league. I just wanted to show you the Seattle Supersonics before I continue simulating. Feel free to pause and take a look. Here are the trades that were done. Ricky Council IV was traded to the Charlotte Hornets for Seth Curry and a 2027 second-round pick. Our first trade was with the Pelicans, Christian Wood, Nicholas Batum, and DeAndre Jordan for a 2028 first-round pick, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, $10 million trade exception, and Matt Ryan. The Memphis Grizzlies traded Jalen Wells and a 2029 second-round pick for Jeff Green. And just a week later, the Memphis Grizzlies traded Jeff Green, Brendan Clark, a 2025 first-round pick, $13 million trade exception, a 2026 pick swap, and Fran Ntilikina for Bruce Brown, Marvin Bagley III, Matt Ryan, a 2026 second-round pick swap, Johnny Juzang, and a 2029 second-round pick. The Los Angeles Lakers traded Gabe Vincent and a 2027 first-round pick for TJ McConnell. The Phoenix Suns traded Royce O'Neal for Jalen McDaniels and $6 million, not to be confused with Minnesota Timberwolves forward Jaden McDaniels. For the next season, I'm definitely going to increase the trade frequency setting, as there were only a handful of trades done, and some of them were done by me. Before starting the playoffs, I was given the option of bringing back Xavier Simpson on a guaranteed deal. And since it is the end of the season, why not let him be on the team for until free agency? The first playing game is the Battle of LA. Los Angeles Clippers make a second half comeback to win this one, 125-124. Davis and James on top of the scoring for the Lakers. Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Porter Jr. on top of the scoring list for the Clippers, although Kawhi did have 36. Memphis and Spurs are next, but in the last 4 minutes, Memphis went on a run, securing the win 108-94. Morant with 27, and the rest of the cast did solid. Bruce Brown, also an amazing contribution to this game, 12, 3, and 5. And Marvin Bagley, the starting center of this game, secured 13 rebounds. The Sixers take on the Indiana Pacers at Indiana, and it's a fairly close back and forth game, but Indiana does secure the win, 117-114. Tyrese Halliburton with 31-point double-double with 3 stocks and 4 rebounds. A pretty okay shooting night for him, 11 of 25, 5 for 13 from deep. Joel Embiid had 23, 13 of 5 with 3 stocks. Paul George had 22, 5 and 3 with 3 stocks. I also noticed that Tyrese Maxey did not play in that game, so I went to check up on him, and he has a dislocated right patella, out for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully he'll be back by the first round. The next playing game is between the Chicago Bulls and Detroit Pistons, 2 teams that are projected to be outside of the play-in tournament in real life, but in 2K they made it. And wow, it's a close one, and wow, a narrow 118-117 victory for the Chicago Bulls. Vucevic with 25, 4 and 1, and Ayo Dosunmu with 22, 2 and 3. Cunningham had 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists with 2 stocks, and Harris shot the ball 8 for 8 from the field and 3 for 3 from 3, 19 points and 4 rebounds. A Lakers-Memphis Grizzlies rematch, but this time LA once again stomps on them, 138-121 victory. Davis on top once again on the scoring list, 34 points. James with 23, 5 and 7, and Dalton Connect with 22 and 3. Morant did everything he could with 37 points. Bagley with 10 and 8 and 2 blocks as well. Though Bruce Brown was the one who struggled off the bench, only 2 points and 1 steal, 1 for 5 shooting. He had also sustained a migraine, so that could potentially be the reason why he struggled so much. Next up is the Chicago Bulls in Philadelphia taking on the Sixers, and the Bulls jump on a first quarter lead. Philadelphia jumps on a pretty decent lead. Chicago comes back in the fourth and overtime, where the Philadelphia 76ers win by 1 point, 132-131. I wanted to take a look at who hit the game-winning shot. It was Paul George who hit a lead-taking three-point shot for his 40th point, and that basically concluded the game. Paul George with 42, 6 and 7 with 2 steals, Embiid with 30, 10 and 5, and the rest of the cast did very solid things as well. For Chicago, it was White with 31, 7 and 7, unfortunately not enough to secure the win in overtime. Let's simulate the first round and see how things are looking. No major upsets in the West. However, in the East, Philadelphia upsets the first seed New York Knicks in 7. The Cleveland Cavaliers upset the Bucks in 6. Miami upset the Orlando Magic in 5. And Boston and Indiana went to Game 7, where the 2 seed Boston Celtics held on. This is what round 1 stats look like. Feel free to pause and take a look. I also wanted to highlight Bam Adebayo's 17 rebounds per game for the series. Time for the second round, and let's simulate. Minnesota eliminates OKC. Dallas eliminates Golden State. Cleveland gets upset by Philly, who continues their Cinderella run to the conference finals. And Boston eliminates Miami in just 5 games. Edwards absolutely slaughtered OKC's defense with almost 39.5 points per game. Gilgeous-Alexander with 37.5, and this is what the rest of the scoring is looking like. Feel free to pause once again and take a look. I also wanted to highlight Luka Doncic and his 14 rebounds per game. Time for the conference finals, and let's simulate. And wow, that was fast. Minnesota eliminates Dallas, and Philadelphia eliminates the Boston Celtics. Anthony Edwards, the Western Conference Finals MVP, with 30 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 stocks per game. 55, 38, and 82 splits. Embiid with 33, 12.5, and 2 assists per game, shooting the ball 60, 36.5, and 96 from the free throw line for the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. This is what the scoring was looking like for the conference finals. Both Jays did everything they could, but unfortunately not enough. Peyton Pritchard was also the starter for the Celtics as Jrue Holiday was dealing with an injury. Pritchard outperformed Kyrie Irving in the conference finals, as you can see. Very interesting stats for the 6'1", 27-year-old. It's time to simulate the finals. Minnesota Game 1. Game 2 is also Minnesota. Game 3, Minnesota. And for a potential sweep, Minnesota with a 38-23 opening in the first quarter. Philly does make it a bit close in the second and third, but ultimately they pull away and win the championship. Minnesota has won the 2024-25 NBA season with Anthony Edwards averaging 44, 7, 6, and the most amazing shooting splits you'll ever see. This is what the stats look like for the finals. Edwards absolutely slaughtered the Sixers in the finals, and it's safe to say that Randle has shaken off the playoff choker title. Thank you for watching this episode of the League Expansion Series videos. Next episode will tackle the first half of the off season.